welcome to today's video lecture. In today's video lecture, I'll be solving previous year's NEET questions and discussing the answers. And this is for the chapter Human Health and Diseases. And we are in part 2 of the series. Alright, so if you haven't watched part 1, please do so. The link will be there in the description box below. Alright, so let's begin. Okay, so question number 1. Which one of the following is not correctly matched? Okay, so please emphasize on not correctly matched, and this appeared in the year 2004. Okay, so you have your options A, B, C, D. So A is Glossina palpalis, and the disease is sleeping sickness. That is correctly matched. B is Culex, and the disease is filariasis. Yes, that's correct. C is Aedes aegypti, and the disease is dengue fever. Yes, that's correct. D is Anopheles and Leishmaniasis. That's incorrect. All right. So actually D is the right answer, because we have to find the one that is not correctly matched. All right. So when we go to the discussion, I'll discuss this in detail. So the answer is D. All right. So let's go to the discussion. Okay. So here I have made a table. If you like, you can note this down in your notebooks. It'll be easier for you to understand. So when it comes to NEET, you need to know what disease is the causative agent of every disease and the vector involved in that disease. Okay, the one that carries that pathogen. Okay, it's called a vector. Okay, so I have made a table where I have written the disease, the causative agent, and the vector. So basically, this question was testing you whether you know the disease and the corresponding vector for that. Right? So if you noticed the options that were given there. Okay, so so here we have sleeping sickness. So you have West African sleeping sickness, and it's Trypanosoma brucei gambians. Okay, so here Trypanosoma is a genus, brucei is a species, and gambians is the subspecies involved. Okay, so usually they write Trypanosoma gambians. It's actually Trypanosoma brucei gambians. Another easy way to remember, if they write only Trypanosoma, soma is associated with sleep. Okay, the Latin word for sleep. So like for example, insomnia. Okay, so that is lack of sleep. So it's another easier way to remember. So if you see Trypanosoma, you associate that with sleeping sickness. Okay, that is a hint that I thought I'll give you and share with you so that you can use it anytime. So you have West African sleeping sickness. The vector here is male and female CC fly. Okay, CC fly is the common name. It's actually Glossina palpalis. There are others also. There's Fucipis, there's tachinoids. Okay, so you can note this down. And if they ever ask you, they usually use the genus Glossina, so you know that's CC fly. Okay, so you have West African sleeping sickness, you have East and Central African sleeping sickness also. Okay, and that is a different subspecies. That is also Trypanosoma brucei, but it's rhodocines. Okay, so if they ever, that's why I'm giving you all this information in a tabular form. If they ever mention rhodocines, you know they're talking about East and Central African sleeping sickness. Okay, that's a different subspecies, and West Africa is a different subspecies. Okay, so there again the vector is CC fly, but there's a different species. Okay, so there are 3 different species that are involved. Okay, it's the species that changes. All right, so you have, these are African sleeping sickness. Okay, you have Central and South America sleeping sickness also, and that is caused by Trypanosoma cruzi. Okay, so if they ever say Trypanosoma cruzi, you associate that with South America, Central and South America. Okay, and that is caused by triatomine bug. Okay, the triatomine bug is the vector. Okay, that carries this pathogen. Okay, this protozoa. And when that bug bites you, okay, they're blood-sucking insects, and so they tend to transport that pathogen inside human beings. Okay, that's how you are affected. Okay, so in African sleeping sickness, we have seen the fly, which behaves as the vector. Okay, which is the vector. In the case of Central and South America, we have the triotomine bug. It's an insect. So they're both are insects, of course, but there's a fly, here it's a bug. Okay, so they're two different ones. Yeah, so for your understanding, please note this down. Okay, and if they ever ask you in your exam, you know the answer then. Okay, let's move on. So filariasis, yes, it's Wuchereria bancrofti, female Culex mosquito. I've already discussed this. Dengue fever is caused by a virus, and it comes under the category Flaviviridae. Okay, and it is caused by Aedes aegypti mosquito. Okay, if they ask you which mosquito is involved, it's Aedes aegypti. Leishmaniasis is caused by Leishmania donovani, and the vector is sandfly. Okay, so sandfly transports this pathogen from humans, okay, to humans and from humans. So Phlebotomus is the genus, and you have different species that are involved, which is Martini, there's Orientalis, there's Argentipes. Okay, so there are three different species, and Phlebotomus is the genus, okay, of this sandfly. And leishmaniasis are of actually three different types, but I'm not going to go into much detail. But it causes, one of them is kala azar. Okay, that's visceral leishmaniasis. Visceral leishmaniasis, which causes kala azar. Okay, so if you see kala azar also, you know, associate that with leishmania. Okay, that is why I have put that, if they ever ask you. Okay, it's not specifically mentioned in NCERT, so I'm not going to too much detail. Of course, when it comes to NCERT and NEET, life cycle of malaria is very, very important. Life cycle of Plasmodium, that is, which causes malaria, is very, very important. Okay, so that you need to study hands down. There is no excuse for that. Okay, so if they ever ask you any questions related to malaria, Plasmodium, you know, all of that, you should know the answer. Okay, because it's there in NCERT. All right, so I guess we can move on. So yes, Anopheles causes malaria, it carries Plasmodium, behaves as the vector for Plasmodium. So yeah, that is there, and that transports, that causes malaria eventually in humans. So that was actually, if you go back to our question, that was the incorrect one, okay, which was not correctly matched. So leishmaniasis, no, that's incorrect. All right, so yeah, easy, we'll move on. All right, so question number 2. Salmonella is related with, and this appeared in 2001. You have A, typhoid, B, polio, C, TB, and D, tetanus. Salmonella is related with typhoid. Okay, we discussed that in part 1, where I've discussed typhoid in a little detail. This was simple, this was pretty direct. So if you watched part 1 and you've taken down notes and you've studied your NCERT, then this should be very easy to answer. So the answer is A. Okay, so I won't discuss too much. If you like, you can watch my part 1 video. All right, typhoid is caused by salmonella. All right, let's move on. Question number 3. Which is the most infectious disease? Okay, and this appeared in 2001. Okay, so I have A, hepatitis B, B, AIDS, C, amoebiasis, and D, malaria. So it's a little tricky, like factual based question, okay, which is, I would suggest you learn the answer. Which is the most infectious disease. Okay, there's a difference between infectious and contagious. Contagious when you pass on from one to another person. Okay, it spreads easily. Infectious when a bacteria or virus or any other protozoa, parasite, or anything that affects you very easily. Okay, that's most infectious to you. Okay, so in this case, it's actually hepatitis B. Okay, so the answer is A. All right, so learn it as a fact. Okay, so for the discussion, so hepatitis B virus spreads via contact with infected blood or body fluids of an infected person. Okay, and the spread of HIV is also the same as hepatitis B, but hepatitis B is 50 to 100 times more infectious than HIV. Okay, so it has the ability to easily infect a person as compared to HIV. All right, so that is why hepatitis B is more infectious than HIV. All right, so like I said, learn it as a fact. All right, so don't spend too much time on understanding it. Okay, and we'll move on then. Okay, so question number 4, which is showing accurate pairing. It's appeared in the year 2000. So you find the accurate pairing. So you have A. syphilis, treponema pallidum; B. AIDS, bacillus conjugalis; C. gonorrhea, leishmania donovani. That's incorrect. D. typhoid, mycobacteria, bacterium leprae. No, that's incorrect. AIDS also incorrect. So it's actually syphilis, treponema pallidum. Okay. So the answer is A. So syphilis is actually a STD, yes, sexually transmitted disease. All right, and I have discussed syphilis in very much detail in reproductive health. So please watch that video, and I have made detailed notes on syphilis. Okay, so but over here you just need to know the causative agent. So it's pretty easy. If you know syphilis, then this is very simple, right? So yeah, treponema pallidum. Then AIDS is of course HIV. Gonorrhea is Neisseria gonorrhea. I have also discussed gonorrhea in reproductive health. Typhoid is Salmonella typhi. Okay, so note this down. Okay, for information over here, they just need you to know the disease and the agent for that. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so question number 5. Saline solution is given to patients of cholera because, and this appeared in the year 2000, and you have your options. A. Sodium prevents water loss from body. B. Sodium chloride functions as regulatory material. C. Sodium chloride produces energy. D. Sodium chloride is antibacterial. Okay, so saline solution given to patient of cholera because sodium prevents water loss from body. Okay, saline is sodium chloride, right? Saline solution is actually sodium chloride solution, but there is more to it. And when it comes to treatment of patients of cholera, it's not just simply saline solution which is given. There's an oral rehydration therapy which I will come to later on. Okay, so the answer is A. The appropriate answer for this question would be A. Okay, so cholera results in severe diarrhea resulting in water and electrolyte loss. Okay, so this is what happens in cholera infection. So now usually oral rehydration therapy is given, so which is basically oral rehydration solution is given to patients, okay, to recover from all the water and the electrolyte loss. Now how does that happen? Okay, so now oral rehydration solution contains sodium, glucose and potassium. Okay, now in the small intestine, and also of course chloride, forgot to mention that. Okay, it also contains chloride. Okay, so in the small intestine, if you go back and study digestive system, so in the small intestine there is a sodium glucose co-transporter, which is very important. Okay, which is very important. The sodium glucose co-transporter allows the uptake of glucose, okay, along with sodium. So for every one glucose there is sodium entering, okay, into your small intestine, which is a very important function that the small intestine does. Now once, for example, you have taken the oral rehydration solution, glucose is gone in, sodium is also gone inside along with glucose. Now once the sodium is inside, it pulls water into the small intestine. Okay, so this is how it matches up to the loss of the electrolytes, okay, and water. Right, so this sodium glucose co-transporter system plays a very important role. Just giving saline solution will not really allow for water uptake to happen. The sodium will not just, behave automatically. So there's actually a technical mistake in that question. That is why I'm correcting it over here. That simply giving saline solution to a cholera patient is not going to treat the patient. Okay, they're not going to recover water along with just sodium chloride. All right, so that is why oral rehydration solution, you get this it's available in the market, the WHO formula that's there. Okay, it also has glucose, and the combination of glucose and sodium plays a very important role. So when glucose goes in, sodium goes along with it, and now when sodium is inside, it grabs water into the system also. Okay, so that is how water moves in. Okay, so it's all because of glucose. It's not just sodium chloride. All right. So saline solution isn't a very appropriate answer to this question. But anyway, to answer this question, yes, we'll go through this discussion. Note it down if you like. All right. So there is a loss of potassium too. Okay. Now potassium also plays a very important role in nerves, right? So during diarrheal attack, there's a loss of potassium results in muscle weakness, this lethargy, and anorexia. Okay. So hence ORS also contains potassium to compensate for the loss. All right. So yeah, this is it. And yeah. Oh, if you go back to our question, saline solution is given to patients of cholera because sodium prevents. Yes, it's not really saline solutions, oral rehydration solution, um, which is actually causing the sodium to prevent water loss from the body. All right. Okay, so clear. Let's move on. Okay, so you have question number 6. Botulism is caused by Clostridium botulinum. Okay, so you can remember this, and it affects the, you have A, B, C, D, and this appeared in the year 1998. So you have A, lymph gland, B, central nervous system, C, spleen, and D, intestine. Okay, so botulism actually, again, there's a technical mistake in this question, just like question number 5, where we talked about saline solution cholera patients. Here also, if I have to choose one answer, I will choose B. Okay, but I will, when we discuss this answer, you'll understand why there's a technical error in this question. Okay, so here for now, let's know that the answer is B. Okay, the answer is B. Let's go to the discussion. So now botulism is a paralytic disease, okay, and is caused by the release of protein neurotoxins from Clostridium botulinum. So Clostridium botulinum is a bacteria which releases neurotoxin. Okay, it releases spores which contain that toxin. Okay, it's a neurotoxin. So it can be caused by a food contaminated with the bacteria, the wounds infected with the pathogen, or ingestion of spores and production of toxin in the intestine. But it does not affect the intestine. It can stay there in the intestine until release those spores, and the spores will then produce the toxin. That's fine. But once the toxin is released, it enters the vascular system, okay, and then is transported to the cholinergic nerve terminals. Okay, cholinergic nerve terminals are nerve terminals that release acetylcholine. Right, we've discussed this in neural system. Go back and read the chapter if you are lost. All right, so it's transported to cholinergic nerve terminals. Okay, the neuromuscular junctions also where this is affected. Now the illness begins with the involvement of cranial nerves, okay, and gradually affects the extremities. All right, so it is clearly specified that there is involvement of cranial nerves, okay, which is actually the peripheral nervous system or the neural system, whatever you want to call it. Okay, it does not, and I repeat, it does not affect CNS in any way. Okay, in the question we saw CNS, which is a technical error. They shouldn't have written that, but it does not affect the CNS. Okay, and this is taken from a medical textbook by Harrison, textbook of internal medicine. Okay, it's clearly specified there that botulism does not affect the central nervous system. Okay, it affects the cranial, starts with the cranial nerves and then moves down to the extremities. Okay, so what it does is, once the neurotoxin is released over there, it blocks, okay, it blocks the release of acetylcholine. Okay, it blocks the release of acetylcholine. That's how these nerve terminals are affected. Okay, so the neurotoxin then eventually causes, it's a paralytic disease, right? So it causes paralysis. So this is how Clostridium botulinum works in the system, in our human body system. Okay, so please remember, it stays in the intestine, but it's not affecting the intestine. It affects directly first to the cranial nerves. It begins at the cranial nerves and then it moves down. All right, and it affects the cholinergic nerve terminals. So the neurotoxin blocks the release of acetylcholine. All right, it blocks the release of acetylcholine, which then of course affects the neurotransmission from one neuron to another neuron, right? Obviously we know that. So yeah, but it does not affect the central nervous system. That is what I want to specifically say. So it's actually the cranial nerve obviously forms a part of the peripheral nervous system, not the central nervous system. Central nervous system, brain and the spinal cord, right? So yep, that's it. So if we go back, yeah. If you have to choose one answer, then yeah, central nervous system. It is a form of a part of the nervous system, but it's not. It's a technical error, okay, from the person who's made the question. Okay, so we'll move on then. Okay, question number 7. Typhoid fever is caused by, this appeared in 98. We already discussed typhoid fever again. It's D, salmonella. Okay, answer is D. Okay, so I will not discuss typhoid fever in detail again. Please watch part 1 for that. All right, we'll move on. Question number 8. Now, diphtheria is caused by, and this appeared in 1997. This A, nematodes, B, bacteria, C, virus, and D, none of these. So, diphtheria is caused by B, bacteria. Okay, answer is B. Please learn this as a fact. So, there's a bacteria called Corynebacterium diphtheria. Okay, so this is the one that causes diphtheria. All right, so pretty direct. Let's move on then. Okay, so question number 9. Which of the following diseases is now considered completely eradicated from India? This appeared in 1997. So we have A, smallpox, B, polio, C, plague, and D, Kala-Azar. Kala-Azar, remember we discussed that in the beginning. Okay, so that's completely eradicated. Again, this is factual based. It's A, smallpox. Okay, smallpox has been completely eradicated from India. Okay, so the answer is A. There were successful mass vaccination programs which eradicated it completely from India. Because smallpox has been completely eradicated. Let's move on. Question number 10. Which of the following symptoms indicate red sickness? This appeared again in 97. You have A, nausea and loss of hair, B, ulcerated skin, nausea and loss of hair, C, red and ulcerated skin, D, nausea and anemia. Okay, so which of the following symptoms indicate red sickness? Okay, so the answer is actually B. We'll come to what red sickness is. The answer is B. Let's go to the discussion. So red sickness is actually also known as pellagra. Okay, and it's caused by the deficiency of niacin, which is vitamin B3 again. If you go and read all the deficiency disease in digestive system, you will understand this, right? So niacin refers to nicotinic acid and nicotinamide and serve as precursors to two coenzymes NAD and NADP, okay, which do the oxidation reduction processes in our system. Okay, so the symptoms of pellagra include loss of appetite, weakness, irritability, abdominal pain, and vomiting. Okay, and also these are the initial symptoms, loss of appetite and so on. These are initial or early signs. Early signs. Okay, so then there is also bright red glossitis. Okay, that's swelling of tongue. Is followed by skin rash that's pigmented and scaling, and this is known as Castle's necklace. Okay, so it forms around the neck. Okay, so there's a term given to it called Castle's necklace. So the skin rash forms around this region over here, which is pigmented and scaly. Okay, there's diarrhea, depression, seizure, and dementia. They form a part of the pellagra syndrome. Okay, it's very important to remember. There's diarrhea, depression, seizure, and dementia, which eventually leads to death. Okay, if it gets too serious. Right, hair loss is also seen in niacin deficiency. Okay, so hair loss also forms a part of this deficiency disease. Right, so to answer your question, yeah, it was ulcerated skin and vomiting, I think nausea and loss of hair. Okay, so B is the appropriate answer for this question. All right, so let's move on. All right, question number 11. Which of the following pair of diseases is caused by virus? Right, okay, so you have A, B, C, and D, and this appeared in the year 96. You have A, rabies, mumps, cholera, tuberculosis. Oh, no, that's incorrect. Typhoid, tetanus, no, they're not viral disease. AIDS and syphilis, no, but syphilis is not. So it's clearly A, rabies and mumps. Answer is A. So like I said previously also, in part 1, you should know the disease and the causative agent, whether it's bacteria, it's a worm, whether it's what a virus, so on. So I've made a list of all the diseases that were there in the question. So if you like, you can note this down. We already discussed this before in the previous part. All right, so you can clearly see rabies is rabies virus and mumps is paramyxovirus. So basically, they were just testing you on whether you know which is a viral disease, which is a bacterial disease, which is a protozoan disease, parasitic disease, whatever, and so on. Right? Let's move on. Pretty simple. Note this down if you like. All right. Okay. Okay. Question number 12. Which one of the following pairs is not correctly matched? Okay, so it's not correctly. This appeared in the year 95. So you have A, syphilis, trichuris, trichuria, which is not correctly matched. So clearly A is not correctly matched. We've already discussed syphilis many times. Sleeping sickness, trypanosoma gambians, yes. Dengue fever, arbovirus. Previously I said flaviviridae or flavivirus. So that forms a part of arbovirus. Okay, so arbovirus contains various other virus. One of them is flavivirus, which eventually causes dengue fever. All right. So I thought I'll let you know, so you know that. And plague is Yersinia pestis. Okay, so yes, that's correct. Syphilis is incorrect. It's caused by Treponema pallidum. So the answer is A. So syphilis is caused by Treponema pallidum. Now trichuris trichura is actually called whipworm. Okay, and it's a nematode that infects the large intestine and causes trichuriasis. Okay, I thought I'll let you know so that you know what that particular pathogen is. Okay, so it's actually a nematode. Right, so clear? This was pretty simple. So if you know syphilis we've discussed a million times by now. Okay, please watch reproductive health. I've discussed all the STDs in that, and I also discussed syphilis in that in very much detail. So we can watch that video. So let's move on. Okay, so question number 13. Which of the following causes plague? Okay, and so we are in 95. You already seen this in the previous questions. So let's go through the options here. Trachinella spiralis, B. Salmonella differendium, C. Yersinia pestis. Yes, that's actually correct. Leishmania, no, that's incorrect. So Yersinia pestis is what causes plague. Right, so it's a bacteria that causes plague. Again, remember the disease and the pathogen. Okay, whether it's bacteria, virus, or so on. All right. Okay, let's move on then. Okay, so question number 14. Which one of the following does correctly match a sexually transmitted disease with its pathogen? Okay, this appeared in 94. So you have A, syphilis, Treponema pallidum. Yes, that's correct actually. Gonorrhea, entamoeba, no, that's incorrect. Urethris, bacillus anthracis, no. Soft sore, bacillus brevis, no, that's Haemophilus duprae. Again, I've discussed this I think the similar question has appeared in reproductive health. So yeah, I remember this question clearly. This has appeared in reproductive health also. So this is just a repeat of that. Like I said, this is related to STDs. The answer is A. Please watch my reproductive health videos. Okay, to understand syphilis is caused by Treponema pallidum. Right, so let's move on. Okay, question number 15. Schizon stage of Plasmodium occurs in human. It's appeared in 93. So this is related to life cycle of Plasmodium that causes malaria. Like I said, malarial life cycle is very, very important, okay? With respect to NEET, you have to know this inside out, okay? So please watch part 1. I have explained that in detail. Please note it down, learn it, read it 10 times. It has to stick in your head because they could ask you any question. So once you have learned those notes, you can answer any question related to the Plasmodium life cycle, all right? Schizon stage of Plasmodium occurs in humans: A. Erythrocyte, B. Liver cells, C. Erythrocytes and liver cells, D. Erythrocytes, liver cells, and spleen cells. Okay, so it's actually C. Erythrocytes and liver cells. All right, answer is C. So schizon stage occurs in both liver cells as well as human erythrocytes. All right, please go and watch my video on Plasmodium life cycle, which is there in part 1. It's the first question. Within the first few minutes, you'll see the life cycle there, so you can go through it and note it down. Put those notes down in your notebook or wherever, and please read it over and over again. So schizon stage occurs in erythrocytic schizogony. And primary exoerythrocytic schizogony. Okay, so in both stages you find the schizon stage. Okay, so that is why it appears in both liver cells and the human erythrocytes. All right, okay, so let's move on. Question number 16. If all ponds and puddles are destroyed, the organism likely to be destroyed is, and this appeared in 93. Okay, so you have A. Leishmania, B. Trypanosoma, C. Ascaris, and D. Plasmodium. Okay, so again, if you this is again related to malaria and Plasmodium. Go watch it, hands down. This is going to appear in the exam. Okay, so there is no way that you can escape from it. If all ponds and puddles are destroyed, the organism likely to be destroyed is Plasmodium. Okay, we'll come to the discussion. That answer is B. Right, let's go to the discussion. So mosquitoes lay eggs in stagnant water. So the female mosquito is the carrier. She behaves as the vector, the Anopheles mosquito, right? And what she does is, when she sees a stagnant water like a puddle or a pond, any small amount of water also that's present there, small puddle also on the road. So especially during monsoons, you find these puddles of water everywhere. The mosquito thinks that, okay, this is my home, now I can lay eggs there, right? So what she does is, the Anopheles mosquito, she lays eggs there, and which gives rise to larvae. Okay, so they are like the pubescent stage of mosquitoes. Okay, so this larvae eventually grow up into becoming mosquitoes again. Okay, now this male or female? Now the female is the carrier of Plasmodium, right? So now they are vectors for Plasmodium pathogen, and hence if ponds and puddles were destroyed, then mosquitoes would not be able to breed, and therefore Plasmodium would not spread, right? So if mosquitoes were not allowed to breed or grow, the larvae were destroyed before they become into adult mosquitoes, then they would not carry the Plasmodium pathogen with them, and that would not eventually infect human beings. That is why it's very important to wherever you're living, your area, wherever, especially during monsoons or even otherwise also, you should make sure that there's no stagnant water anywhere, in front of your house or anywhere else, because that forms as a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Okay, so even in the life cycle, I have explained how there's a larvivorous fish which eats on the larvae, and also another bacteria is also used, which releases these toxins, which then eventually kill those larvae. Okay, so in that way we curb or we reduce the spread of these the growth of these mosquitoes, which eventually obviously behave like vectors for carrying the pathogen. All right, so this is one technique that we all apply um, in culminating or curbing the spread of the pathogen. Okay, so yeah, to answer this question, yes, if puddles and ponds were destroyed, then yes, Plasmodium would not spread, because mosquitoes would not be allowed to breed. That is why it's very important to get rid of any stagnant water anywhere next to you. All right. All right. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so question number 17. Give the correct matching of positive agent or germ and disease. Okay, it's here in 93. You have Anopheles, it's malaria, Leishmania, sleeping sickness, Glossina, Kala-azar, Wuchereria, filariasis. So you have to find the correct matching of positive agent or the germ and the disease. Okay, so but Anopheles is not the causative agent, behaves as a vector. Okay, we just discussed that. Leishmania also is no, it does not cause sleeping sickness, Leishmania, so that's incorrect. Glossina is CC fly, which again behaves as a vector. Okay, so and but not for Kala-azar. Okay, so again this is wrong. Wuchereria, yes, that is the causative agent, and it's a worm which causes filariasis. So the answer is D. Answer is D. Okay, so I've discussed filariasis in detail in part 1. So it's briefly discussed in NEET, sorry, NCRT. So it might appear in NEET. That is why you should know. This is a good question actually. This deserves a smiley face. Okay, because they could easily fool you, into thinking which is the vector and which is the causative agent. That is why it's very important to know, to create a clear demarcation in your head in which is the disease, the causative agent, and the vector. Okay, so don't get confused. They were giving names of vectors which could confuse you with the actual pathogen. Okay, so yeah, this was a good question. They could have easily fooled you into this. Okay, so yeah, yeah, Wuchereria causes filariasis or elephantiasis also. All right, so I've discussed Wuchereria in detail in the previous part. Okay, so please go watch that video. Okay, next question. Question number 18. The part of life cycle of malarial parasite Plasmodium vivax that is passed in female Anopheles is, this appeared in 92. Okay, so the part of life cycle of malarial parasite Plasmodium vivax that is passed in female, okay, is A. Sexual cycle, B. Pre-erythrocytic schizogony, C. Exoerythrocytic schizogony, and D. Post-erythrocytic schizogony. Okay, so again you need to know the life cycle of malaria Plasmodium in this. There are two, right, hosts. There's human host and there's the female mosquito host, right? So what is passed into the Anopheles mosquito? That's what we want to know. Which part is transferred from human into the mosquito host. So it's actually sexual cycle. Okay, so it's A, sexual cycle. So the immature gametes are formed in the RBCs, erythrocytes, and then the mature gametes are found in the peripheral blood of humans. Okay, so when the mosquito bites and takes the blood meal, those gametes are then transported into the mosquito. Okay, now once they enter the mosquito, then fertilization takes place between the male and the female gamete. Okay, that results in zygote and so on. Okay, so which eventually forms sporozoites, and yeah, so on. The whole cycle repeats itself again and again. So sexual cycle is then passed on. That was the answer. So sexual gametes are passed into the female Anopheles mosquito. Okay, oops, sorry. So to answer your question, let's go back. Yeah, so clearly it's not B, C, and D. It's not B, C, and D. It's sexual cycle. Okay, so sexual cycle eventually happens in the maturity of the sexual gametes happens in the mosquito. Okay, so that is passed on. All right, yeah, let's move on. Okay, question number 19. African sleeping sickness is due to, when this appeared in 91, A. Plasmodium vivax transmitted by CC fly. That's incorrect. Trypanosoma lucida transmitted by bedbug. Trypanosoma gambians transmitted by Glossina palpalis. Yes. D. Entamoeba gingivalis spread by housefly. No. So clearly it is C. We've already discussed African sleeping sickness. Answer is C. Like I said, they really testing you on which is the disease, the positive agent, and the vector. You remember, you saw the previous question a few questions back where they actually put vectors which could confuse you into thinking that that's the positive agent, but that's incorrect. So don't get confused. You have to clearly make a table. Make a table in your notebook and read it over and over again, because the more you read, the more you remember it. Okay, so these are things, these are facts, right? You can't really change in anything. There's no story or anything behind it, not like physiology, right? So these are factual based questions, and if you just know it, it's very easy to answer these questions and just get marks from this. It's very easy if you just know. If you had made a table in your notebooks and studied that and knew the answer, it's very easy to answer this question, right? But there's no logic or anything like that applied here, unlike physiology where you have to apply a little bit of logic into it, right? So the answer is C. So African sleeping sickness caused by Trypanosoma gambians and is transmitted by Glossina palpalis, which is also known as CC fly. There are different types of African sleeping sickness. West Africa sleeping sickness, Central and East Africa. So remember that. Okay, and the sleeping sickness in Central and South America also. So you do remember which one is what. Okay, so clear. Let's move on then. Okay, question number 20. Malignant tertian malarial parasite belongs to class, and it's appear 91. Again, question related to malaria. Now you know how important malaria is, right? With respect to NEET. So you have to know the life cycle, no doubt about that. So malignant tertian malarial parasite belongs to class Plasmodium falciparum. We've already discussed this in part 1 also. I made a table. So the answer is A. Alright, it's caused by Plasmodium falciparum. So the fever is prolonged and intense. Okay, clear? Let's move on. Again, factual based question. Like I said, if you know the facts, this is all very easy to answer. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so question number 21. Who discovered Plasmodium in RBC of human beings? Yes, again, as a factual base and related to malaria and Plasmodium. It's appear in 91. So you have A. Ronald Ross, B. Mendel, C. Laveran, and D. Stephens. So who discovered Plasmodium in RBC of human beings? It's actually Laveran. Okay, answer is C. Again, learn it as a fact. Okay, if they ever ask you in the question, in the exam, you know the answer. Okay, so the answer is C. So Dr. Alphonse Laveran discovered Plasmodium in RBC of humans. Alright, so this is factual based, pretty simple. A direct question. Yeah, there was nothing really to know much. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so we've come to the end of this video lecture, and I hope you've enjoyed today's video lecture. I hope you've learned something new today. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to MJ NEET Biology. And I'll see you in the next video lecture. Right? So, bye.